All right. Yeah, so we'll get going. Another town hall today. I think that there's been a lot of interesting conversation going on in in both of our chats in general and trading all throughout about kind of our governance process. And so I kind of wanted to just kick this off with a little bit of an open forum for some direct feedback on governance, on how things are handled. Because I know that folks, give us feedback in chats and stuff like that. I'd like to kind of have it kind of grouped into a more centralized place, a little more something that we can turn into an actionable conversation. So might as well open it up here for just comments on how you guys think about governance right now, and avenues for improvement, and any other suggestions that y'all might have. So if you've got some thoughts on governance and how things have been going, let's hear it, because I think that I think Hazard has said it, and I think a number of us are open to figuring out ways to make this improved and better. So maybe it's about SoFunds, maybe it's about the speed at which things are handled. But yeah, I'm just kind of open to any thoughts anybody wants to share on these topics as well. That's funny. You guys are cracking me up. Peso, come on up.
All right. Well, looks like I'll break the ice.
How you doing, bud?
First of all, hello, all 8 people in this chat. I was actually laughing my ass off when I saw that. Okay, so SoFins, right? I think the reason that sort of there's like a backlog of KIPs, or like there's sort of nebulous around what makes a KIP go to vote is there's a distinct lack of KPIs. Like, we need a set of parameters that are predictable for sort of what happens to a KIP after it sort of has apparent consensus in a town hall, and there's sort of a group or sort of all of the community wants to see that KIP go to vote, whether it be 3 days, 5 days. Like, there just needs to be something put in place so that KIPs that are written and have traction with the community are actually put to vote, whether that be SoFin recommendations on how the KIP should be changed, or just a specific amount of time that SoFins have to actually submit the recommendation. So that's sort of my 2 cents on how things should be done on the SoFin side of things, both as governance facilitators and as sort of advisors to the project in a certain way. Give me a second here. I'm thinking. Okay, so then for how maybe like KIP structure, I think that's a sort of interesting can of worms to open, just because there's so many different directions a KIP can go, right? Like would a hiring KIP have the same structure as the CVX KIP? And would that have the same structure as, I don't know what other KIPs there are, but I mean, it should be sort of on a case-by-case basis, and it's sort of hard to actually have like a blanket structure for a KIP.
So can I interrupt you there?
Yeah, sure.
So when you talk about a structure, are you talking about like a procedure for how specific types of KIPs should move forward or not?
I don't even know, to be honest. I'm more saying that just in the sort of how it's written, like sort of the idea behind it, like I guess something that's important is how a KIP can be actionable, because it's always nice to sort of hand wave the idealistic bullshit, but when it comes to actually putting that into action, I think that's a really big challenge. I face that a lot personally, and I think it would make it easier for community members to start writing tips if there's sort of an emphasis on how to make it actionable. That's just my 2 cents. I might come up with some other stuff, but I just sort of came up to break the ice, and if anyone else wants to talk,
No, I think that that's a great place to start, of looking at kind of a reflection of really, like, even where things originate as well. Thinking about, the kips that have come through, and let's just leave it at like the last 2 months here. I think that the most traction oriented, or the ones that have gained the most traction, have been ones that have come from community members, kind of organically, that came together. And when I talk about traction, I mean, I talk about the amount of engagement that they get in the Discord, the amount of attention that they receive in on Twitter or in other communities. So yeah, I think that is an interesting thing to look at, in terms of, like, looking at kips that are written, and how can we get the right amount of engagement that leads to really kind of obviously apparent consensus, and then what happens after it reaches that community point. So I think that, yeah, really appreciate you hopping up and starting the thoughts on that as well. I think that one of your first points about, okay, so we talked about a kip in a town hall, and it's really been a little bit of a mixed bag on timelines for kips after that, of if or when they go to a vote. And I can hear your point of, like, without specific parameters, how is anybody going to know to still pay attention to it, even? Or I don't have the right answer for that. But I'm writing it down. I'm taking notes here. So I think that that's a really interesting thing to kind of think about, is, if we wanted to really define, like, a methodology of, how quickly do we feel like we need a verdict from something passed on from the SOFONs for it to go to, say, a vote, or how the SOFONs have determined that, along with, what's happened on the forum, what's happened in Discord, what's happened on the town hall, is consensus, community, consensus. And so, yeah, I'm not the best thinker on this one, I guess, but yeah, I appreciate you hopping up there. Would love to field any other kind of thoughts on governance processes. I'm taking notes on this now, as we kind of look to kind of build and iterate on our processes. So does anyone else have any thoughts on anything from kip writing to achieving crowd consensus, to SOFONs, to anything like that? Open to some more feedback on this. But if there's not, then I can always hop onto the forum. Oh, hey, I got you, Pesa. Go on ahead.
I'll keep talking until someone tells me to shut up. That's fine. Okay, so let's move on to the buyback kip, right? I was against that. I think a few other community members were against that. It's being done now, I think, and I'll be the first to admit I was partially wrong. I still believe I was sort of semi-right, but holding $100 with that limit order, I ain't mad. I ain't completely mad. That's, in my imagination, at least, that's what's being done, is you just have a nice little hiding book limit order at $100, and whenever we dip, that holds the line, which is sort of gives me peace of mind to a certain extent. But one thing to be mindful of, I guess, is there was like real objections on that, right? I mean, like Crypto Messiah was like, this is a fucking stupid idea. I actually agree with a lot of his points. But then again, like there's some valid points on the other side regarding, I think in the KIP there was mention of doing a DAO swap, if I'm not mistaken, with a project. There's no sort of specifics on that. But that's obviously a valid sort of reason to start accumulating Rook, so we retain our existing Rook in our treasury. And then maybe we sort of get a nice 2x, 3x from the coordination game, so that 3 million actually becomes 9 million. And we sort of increase our treasury that way as sort of a swing trade on ourselves. But my question is sort of, how did we, like, there was real, like, I was against it, Crypto Priest was against it, Layer 1K was against it. I think there was some valid concerns, maybe not all of them, but how is that sort of viewed as apparent consensus when there was a lot of vocal objections? But obviously when it came to vote, you could make an argument that sort of token holders might not act in the best interest of the DAO, but they always act in the best interest of themselves. And then it's about sort of trying to align the best interests of the DAO and the best interests of token holders together to make them vote in sort of a productive way. And the buyback sort of acts in the best interest of token holders, financially at least. So yeah, that's sort of my question, I guess, is how was it brought to sort of the community supports this when there was a lot of objections?
You know, I think from the part that I have exposure to, which was, you know, me being on the town hall and then running the governance workshop the following day, I thought that a lot of those objections were kind of discussed out and talked through, especially on the governance workshop the next day after the kind of feedback and edits were implemented. But I don't have a clear answer for you, for the folks that were do it over a longer period of time. And I think that, you know, the counter argument was you know, coordination game and timing and where we are in terms of kind of nav. But back to your kind of your point of looking at this in more of like a zoomed out lens of truly defining crowd consensus. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's not something that I'm really that great at handling. Are we looking at crowd consensus as 100% of our community members being in favor of it, and that's crowd consensus? I'm not really 100% sure there. And you know, I'd welcome, you know, any other thoughts on that. But you know, you do bring up a solid point that, you know, there, you know, especially in your eyes, there were outstanding objections that maybe you felt weren't addressed enough or taken into consideration enough, and that's valid concerns. And so I appreciate you getting back up here and talking about it.
Okay, bet. And then I want to call out Hazard if he can come up, because I have a question for him. So I've been talking to some community members. The market's been rugging, which is actually kind of bullish for us because we have big dollars in the bank. And then a lot of people are sort of in favor of resuming our sort of buys of CVX, maybe less aggressively, like maybe like a lump sum of like 5 million to begin with, and then we just sort of DCA into it, have a tighter floor. Ceiling, pardon me, of sort of our max price. Instead of 40, maybe we can go for $30. But I was sort of talking with you about that. I don't know if this is private information or not, but we'll find out when I ask you. But you said you weren't a fan of curve gauges, and I just sort of would like for you to expand on that, because I think you're not a fan of us buying more CVX, and I don't know what you know with respect to sort of your perception of CVX and why it would be a bad idea to start buying now when we would be buying below our initial entry.
Okay, there's a couple things. First, I think you're ascribing a lot to a comment about very narrow question about curve gauges. So getting from my comment about how I don't think currently, given the way that the original CVX KIP was written, it's economically rational for us to pursue a curve gauge without either additional CVX or, alterations to our tokenomics, etc. I think getting from there to I'm not a fan of sort of buying more CVX is maybe skipping a lot of different steps and sort of begging the question. Like,
yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's fine. But I think that with any question of acquisition of things, just do as we've tried to do up to this point, step by step. We have our governance process. We can look at it and evaluate it. The process should start with a proposal, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Many people here have traded assets, obviously. Whether or not CVX is cheap or expensive or whatever, really depends on how you look at the market, the utility you hope to gain from it, what it adds to our treasury, what it adds to our protocol. So rather than think about it in terms of a cost basis that we need to lower and a target that we need to hit, I think we should take if you want to pursue something like this, I think a good exercise would be to take a look at the original KIP for the CVX acquisition and examine sort of what it was that we attempted to achieve or that we were wanting to achieve in that KIP, because it lays out specifics of that strategy. And at a minimum, adjust those numbers to reflect sort of the situation today and what we know about the situation today, and then go from there and work backwards to determine, how much would be necessary, what would the benefit be, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And the reason I sort of bring it up here is because we have sort of X amount of community members here, and maybe they can voice their support or I guess their objections about us resuming buying CVX, because then this is like sort of a
we should
mini.
Just resume buying CVX. I think there needs to be a proposal with a concrete sort of plan, and what are we doing with it, and why? Because in the original CVX KIP, there was a very sort of it was a comprehensive, but there was a strategy in mind, and it was more than just collecting bribes, right? And so I think in order to justify accumulating more CVX, and I'm just speaking as a SOFUN here, I would probably want to see us revisit that and sort of update those numbers, and just kind of check that we're still on for that, right? Because I think bribe revenue is good, but it's still a very volatile asset, and there's a lot of other things that we could do in our strategy, our treasury strategy, particularly in a time of sort of enhanced volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace, right?
Like what? Enlighten me, Hazard.
Well, see, I don't want to give you the impression that these things come from me, because they don't. They come from you all. I'm just laying out maybe what, in terms of review process, we should probably do is gather around a concrete proposal and take a look at what's in that proposal. So, I mean, it's fine to kind of chat about should we get more CVX or not, but We should have a sort of framework for what we're going to do with it when we get it, how much of it we need, and not more. So you just kind of said, let's buy 5 million and then keep buying from there. But, you know, there's a lot of factors involved with doing that we should consider probably.
That
So-
is all. That's all the questions I have.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Peso. So why don't we take a look at the forum here? I think that in terms of items that are still kind of being discussed, it looks like solid support on the B protocol proposal. I think the last time we left off last week on this one was deciding where the funding came from on that, or discussing that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the B Pro proposal? I feel like we're at a really good point with it. I know that the B Pro guys have been iterating on things as well. Let's see. Oh, hey, I'm coming back here. Oh, we got a hand raise.
My thoughts on the B Pro is I support it. Let's send it. That vote's gonna pass. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. It's in the sort of best interest of the DAO in my eyes. But I welcome any objections. I'm really curious to see why people wouldn't want to do that out of curiosity. But I support it. Anyways, that is all.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on the B Pro? As I've misnomered before, the P Bro, on the proposal. I am also in favor of it, as I said on the forum. I think that this strategy of looking at treasury allocation with a mind for integrations, for securing long-term protocol alignments. I'm really in favor of ideas like this. Personally, this is not me speaking for the team or the DAO or anything. For me, an allocation like this really kind of comes as a little bit of a stark difference than, say, acquiring more CVX, because of I think what this can bring to us. I think that the B Pro guys, I mean, as their own team, have been awesome to work with. They come to us with good communication and ideas. We're even looking at discussion, collaborating things outside of just this backstop. One of them is a really cool marketing initiative where we're talking about around ETH Denver and working on as well. So like things like that, I'm really in favor of. And I know that there's been some other kind of things being investigated on using some of our treasury for other kind of integration minded activities as well. So just a roundabout way of saying I'm really supportive of this. It's something that I really like. But yeah, I'm opened up. Any other comments that folks want to share on this one? If not, we can kind of grab another discussion topic. Nope. Okay. Let's see here. One that I was hesitating to bring up to today because it just so recently posted, and I wanted to actually have them on to discuss it, was the Maple one. And I know that they are really excited about it and want to come tell the community directly about the opportunity. I'm happy to kind of open it up now, but know that I think we'll revisit this again next week when we'll have some of maybe the Maple guys around to talk about it, but I'm happy to open it up. Any comments on the Maple proposal and using some of our ETH to help them with a new pool. So if anyone's got any comments on Maple, would be happy to get you up on stage right here and talk about it. For me, I think that it's a little bit tricky. I think that if you look at the latest comment on it, I think Matt brought up a really good point about, really kind of understanding our treasury, understanding where our future's heading, and maybe taking a big chunk of stuff outside of this without, kind of direct longer term alignment. Like, I would just go right back to the B protocol one. Can make this seem a little bit more challenging. I do know that Maple's really well connected, and maybe there is bigger alignment that we can work out with them. And maybe it's looking at the market makers and institutional folks that they work with already, and helping them start bringing order flow through us. But yeah, I think that it probably needs a little bit more conversation around it, and especially from the Maple side as well. Matt, I see you hop up here. You want to share some thoughts?
Yeah. Just to piggyback, I won't dive into all my comments and all the reasons. People can kind of take a look at that at their leisure. But really, from my perspective, this is my underlying thesis. We need situations where it's protocol alignment, and where we're integrated into, depending on what the application is, into their suite of products, into their network, and that, in my mind, should be a prerequisite, because maybe not everybody here sees how many people are knocking on our doors to have our funds deposited into their pools, or invest in their protocol, or be a seed round investor, like whatever it may be. People see our treasury, and it's kind of like the bears coming to the honey. And we need to be very selective about that. And those situations that are always going to be the most ideal, for the most part, are going to be the ones where it's we're getting integrated, and we're expanding our networks through other people's expanding their networks. And so my comments are not directed necessarily towards Maple and specifically. It's just a general fact that we want to be integrated, and I made this clear with them, directly with them, and we're working behind the scenes to try to come up with what that strategy or what that plan looks like, and how can we really develop a more holistic relationship. So in my mind, it's not me shooting them down and saying goodbye forever. It's just how do we work towards a more common holistic goal together.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, that's a really good point, is that I think that people have kind of wanted to see proposals that land on forum be in their final form as they're posted. And I think that there's a little bit more I guess flexibility, or even like agility, that should probably be considered with these. Is that is it a terrible idea? No, not. I think that it's beneficial for us. It obviously has positive outcomes. It's a great working relationship that we have with another protocol. And so maybe it's not so much as a, like, in this form, it's not perfect for us yet, but we should be wanting to work with them on it, and figure out the right way of where it lands, and how that is mutually beneficial for us, not just now, but long term as well. 5 million, especially now, $5 million in ETH. I think when they first brought this up to me, I think before the beginning of the new year, they were talking about, hey, we're thinking about creating an ETH pool, and doing loans on it. Well, ETH was worth what, like, whatever percent more. We're down what, like 35-40% from that point. So that ETH goes a lot less of a way now. So I think that overall market conditions really kind of are starting to play a factor in how we think about this as well. Where I think that if we're talking about a $5 million ETH investment, and we're sitting at 130 million like we had been at one point, it's a lot different than us being at the, whatever 80 something million that we're at now. So I think it's just it's interesting to look at, just in terms of kind of like our overall processes of, I think that when we think about feedback on proposals, that I think that it shouldn't just be on it. It should be like, hey, I think here's this way that we can take this proposal and make it better. Yeah, that's at least just my thought on iterating on this.
And just to kind of give people more clarity in my thought process, in bear, I don't want to say bear market, but in degrading market conditions like we're kind of seeing now, I see as when prices go down, our opportunity cost that we need to kind of beat go up, because especially if things get real bad, there's gonna be so many teams that are gonna run out of capital and they're gonna have to stop their project or maybe abandon it completely. And in that situation, we could snag them up and we can get talent, at bulk and at cheap prices, and we can get technologies at cheap prices. And so, these are the times where we can start accumulating. And this is me speaking from a mergers and acquisition background, but these are the times that excite me, especially us being in a very liquid, diverse position, and people kind of knowing that is a very powerful tool. And so, when somebody comes to us and say, "Hey, put $5 million in a pool and get 10% return or whatever it is," that's great. But in these times, the opportunity cost is way higher. So that's just kind of a little more context in my thought process.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for hopping up, Matt. I appreciate it. Peso, you got some more thoughts?
Yeah, I went to go pee, so I kind of missed half of that. So we're talking about the maple, right? The maple proposal, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, we were touching on it for sure. Yeah.
I'm kind of against it, to be honest. I think I packaged my comments on the forum in a sort of not really clean way, but I wasn't really that much a fan of it to begin with. And now, like, what we're getting in return doesn't justify the optimunity cost in my eyes. Like, we're stuck like locking up for like 3 months or whatever for like a suboptimal APY on something that we've already begun accumulating. Just from a risk standpoint, it doesn't make sense in my eyes, unless we can get something a little juicier, like they whitelist us for flash loans on unloaned amounts throughout all of the maple pools, and then that basically nullifies our current LP for USDC, because keepers can just go through maple for flash loans that are sort of have zero fees, as opposed to going through us, and then that sort of allows us to leverage our USDC in the treasury in interesting ways. So that's my 2 cents on that idea. But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I think we could be yield farming somewhere else that is sort of comes from the community instead of coming from a private interest like Maven, which obviously wants our capital, but it's if the community says, let's yield farm somewhere else, I'd be a lot more enthused about that than sort of a private interest just writing a proposal to send our money their way. It's sort of kind of boring in my eyes and not in our best interest potentially. Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Hey, Peso, I think you do bring up a good point though of our LPs. And how that affects our treasury. And I think that it would be interesting to start investigating, if there are ways that we can leverage other partnerships as a way to reduce our reliance on our own. For me, I'm not as educated on, flash loans and how our LPs work, and how say Ninja or other keepers that use our flash loan pools will be affected by phasing those out. But I think that does bring up an interesting point on the need to iterate on that a little bit. I think that's pretty good. Does anyone else have any thoughts on say Maple before I bring kind of the next topic that I had, planned here? Cool. I think the next topic that I had to bring up, and I think I even see it being chatted about in voice chat, and sorry I'm having to flip between channels and stuff as I'm hosting here, was what we're doing with CVX bribes. So, right now, we're accumulating, and we are using these bribes to then flip for Rook, which we're using to, kind of seed Rook staking right now. And so I would like to just bring this in front of the community. I think that we've stacked up a pretty solid chunk of Rook for this now, and so what I would like to hear is if someone's got some thoughts of saying like, hey, we should just continue doing this, or if there's another venue for what we should be doing with these CVX bribes, because I have some thoughts, but I want to open it up to the group first. And if not, I can just dive right into my thoughts. So what I've been thinking, and something that's been kicked around and has been brought up in actually a number of different conversations with other protocols, is using our votes. I think leverage is a bit of a strong word, but almost as leverage for encouraging folks to work with us and integrate and send order flow through our protocol. So one of the conversations I actually had recently was talking about doing a bit of a long-term arrangement with our votes, where we could get a pretty large lump sum of another protocol's native tokens, where we commit to say 3 or 6 month period where we are dedicating our votes to that protocol. In exchange for that, we can get a larger upfront, amount of tokens that we're going to agree to not put to the market, where instead, let's say that they paid that in bribes. Well, number one, you're taking 4 or 5% off the top of that via Vodium's fee. But then, for folks that claim these bribes and then sell them and liquidate them, just like what we've been doing, it's not that great of a use for them and their bribes. And so looking at kind of longer term arrangements in terms of committing our votes to people for an elongated amount of time in exchange for a lump sum, and those that OTC deal not hitting the open market, I think is a really interesting one to look at. Another conversation I've had is allocating some of our votes in exchange for them performing rebalances or buybacks or other kind of protocol operations directly through us, or directing some of their operations to some of our newer products that are in development as well. So, this is where, kind of I've been doing a lot of musing on this. I've shared some of our thoughts in our little CVX working group as well. But if someone else has, thoughts about what they really want to see us doing with these CVX votes and the potential revenue coming in from them, I'd love to hear any thoughts on that as well. Lappy, how you doing, bud? Come on up. Lappers, can you accept the...
Yeah, I'm a little rusty on the on that. I couldn't find the accept button. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can. How you doing?
I'm good. How you been, man?
Good. What are your thoughts here, bud?
Well, I have kind of two things. I think what you're getting at is a really interesting idea. First of all, I hope everybody's been well. But yeah, I think what you're getting at is really interesting. I think it would, if there is a protocol that lines up that can provide volume through the coordination game, in turn for us kind of having some deal to hold their asset in exchange for for the bribes, that makes a lot of sense. I guess that would be on a specific case of like which protocols can actually offer something that improves our protocol and order flow. The second thing that kind of crosses my mind, and part of why I popped in today, is CVX is now way under the $40 cap that we had. So I'm just kind of curious, and I know that this is a little tangential from your original question, if there's consideration to dive back into, completing the KIP 5 now that the parameters are now reset, or kind of we're within the parameters again.
Yeah, and it might have. I'm not sure when you hopped onto the call today. It's my understanding, and I think kind of what we're operating on is that once the year turned, that we were kind of outside of the parameters to be able to continue the buying operation, and so that's where I thought that's kind of was that we're going to need a new proposal to restart the buying. Yeah.
My 2 cents with that would be, this is obviously something the community can discuss. My 2 cents would be, since the parameters weren't satisfied on one, the timing parameter was not the crux of the KIP. The crux of the KIP was accumulating under $40, and the community was fully set on that. I don't remember any discourse about people being too focused on the timing outside of just trying to prevent front running, so it was kind of opaque. So what worries me about that, as somebody who obviously is an advocate of this, and I think now that it's been going on for a couple months, the proof is in the pudding that it's been a pretty successful way to utilize the treasury, is that going through the governance process again just to kind of fuzzy up the dates when we already fuzzied up the actual process of accumulating. But to fuzzy up the date we all remember that month-long process, and then there was all the speculation, and doing that whole rigmarole again seems unideal. So that's kind of my notion there. I didn't mean, and I did miss the earlier part of the community call, so I don't mean to push the direction too much. To your actual idea of trying to arrange having a consistent partner for our bribes, I do think that's a really good idea as well. But yeah, I just want to throw my 2 sats kind of in there about both of those.
For sure. Yeah, Peso, you got some thoughts?
Yeah, just to build on to that, we also never voted to stop buying it. We just sort of assumed that let's stop buying it because we're outside of the parameters. But there was never any official vote or KIP that even sort of there was a KIP that was emergency, let's stop, and then we were okay, let's not sort of trigger it, let's not just ape completely into CVX.
Sorry. I think you have it backwards. I think there was a KIP to extend the deadline. I think that the parameters in the KIP 5 that did pass were clear. Is my memory about that wrong? I mean, I can pull it up and take a look.
I don't even know. Maybe not. I literally, I sort of don't even understand what you just dropped on me, to be completely honest.
You're saying that there was some kind of emergency action to stop buying or something?
Oh, yeah. It was extending 100%. It was extending the deadline. I'm pretty sure you're correct on that. Yeah. And then sort of how long is that? Yeah. CVX strategy modification, extending the purchase window. It was sort of, here you go. It was sort of kind of very short and not very specific. So I think maybe we need to revisit that potentially. That's all really. I'm just saying that we sort of never officially voted to sort of extend the window even. That should have maybe have happened, but obviously it's the past and there's nothing you can really do about it. Now that obviously we've crossed the window. But yeah, that's really it.
I guess personally my concern is just going through the rigmarole again for the sake of process, when I would have to imagine there's basically unanimous thought that, the same reasoning that we originally wanted to get involved with this, and now we even have more proof that it works. For the sake of process, we end up costing ourselves probably entry again because there would be all the speculation. We already went through that dance once and saw the repercussions of it.
Yeah, Lappers, I hear you there. But I think that there has been a little bit of a change in some community sentiment. I've seen some people being pretty vocal about not wanting any more CVX as well.
Okay, I missed that. That's fair enough.
Yeah, and so I think it is definitely in a weird spot, for sure. Scamder, did you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I had a question for Hazard because he was talking about this like earlier in the call about the CVX buys, and I just wanted to ask him like what's changed in the past month after that expiry. Like I understand that our treasury is lower, but with regards to what we were trying to do with the convex buys, I don't see how anything's fundamentally changed there. And yeah, also I agree with Lapras that we shouldn't really muddy things here and then kind of go through this whole process again. I think it would just be simpler to maybe get a simple kip out and then have a vote on whether we should maybe continue with the buys or reconsider the buys. I don't know, just thinking something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point. Even when I posted that CVX buying window extension, I don't think I did a good job of that. I don't think I posed any case for extending it. I didn't say any reasons why it would be a good reason to do it in current conditions. I didn't provide any context of the amount of revenue it's generated or anything like that. So I think that if this is something that wants to be put up for debate again, I think that amount of research into kind of where we're at and what we're going to be doing with it, I think needs to be revisited for sure. Matt, I saw you hop on up here.
Yeah, a couple comments. I think a couple times the word proof when it comes to CVX, like it's proven that it works, and it's been obviously the value of it shot up, but I think the original intention was to kind of dictate and use this governance to, again, to your point, Dietz, earlier, get integrated, and I don't think we've seen any, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know what conversations or traction we've seen on that front, kind of using this asset that is directly tied to using this governance to get us integrated. So maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but if that hasn't really proven itself and market conditions have declined, then yes, there definitely has been changes in the underlying fact of why we bought it, at least in my mind. Just a higher level thing, and I don't care if this is CVX or some other investment, doesn't really matter, but the amount of time and energy we've kind of spent discussing this, and if that was refocused towards something that was more mission aligned, it's tremendous. And I just encourage us all to kind of focus on trying to find opportunities like that are more mission aligned. Again, this has nothing to do with CVX per se, but just any investment we really look at.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that one of the challenges that I've found is balance. Balancing what I think the original intent of that KIP 5 was, and balancing the actual operations of it and how it I don't know. I feel like I haven't reached a good spot on it, even as for me as kind of the person that's handling or at least clicking on voting and kind of organizing the conversation around it. I feel that I haven't it hasn't arrived at a like a truly awesome kind of flywheel beneficial thing that we had thought. If as we look that we're getting a lump sum chunk of something that comes every 2 weeks, and it takes a number of heads to even just get things off of our multi-sig and claim and do other operations with those tokens and stuff. Like it's it's just intensive, and that's just on like the easy stuff that we have right now. And so, I think that adding more complexity to it might, I don't know, might not be the best avenue here. Where like some of the conversations I've been investigating, where we would just know every week we're voting for our partner protocol, and we've already got our revenue in the bag already as well. Hey, Ape, I saw that you were invited up. Lapras, I think, has something extra to say here too. I'm calling both you guys up.
Go ahead, Abe.
Oh yeah, no, just a quick point. Like you said, there's nothing coming out of like the flywheel aspect, but I mean the factory pool's alive, and we just have to like set up the convex governance vote to get our gorge and to start bribing for our own pool. If that still is the goal, like it's not impossible, it just has to be done.
Yeah, I hear you. I've also been in the other discords and stuff where folks have been like very much saying like, you are not going to get a gauge. We will not be voting for you. So, I don't know how much you want to take that at face value. But it is something to consider that, that there is some kind of a narrative that we need to play into on achieving some of the goals that were set out to achieve. Lappers, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, so I think Ape's point is good that it is not like there's the same barrier to actually get a gauge set up anymore. What most of those people in the CVX eco would actually care about, I think, is getting bribed to vote for the gauge. I honestly don't know exactly what their sentiment is after the whole fiasco of whatever, their interpretation probably isn't the most positive. And I want to agree with Maddie that there's probably more aligned allocations. I just look at the situation as a second chance to kind of follow through of what initially the community was most channeled around collectively. And then I would think that the discussion between focusing on a gauge weight or, sorry, my cat just jumped on my laptop. So I think the differentiation between the two could be figured out over time. One thing I'm curious about, it seems like you've talked to a couple partners, Dietz, would be like, let's say we didn't have a gauge weight, but we did increase our CVX position. Do you think there's like a cap that we're at now that those potential partners that we could have this nice relationship with around our bribes for their participation within our protocol? Do you think there's a cap on like if we, chipped away and bought a couple more, I don't know, X amount of CVX? Obviously, at this point with our diminished treasury, it wouldn't be the same size we were thinking initially. But like, would that hurt or strengthen their interest in this type of arrangement? And I don't know, because I don't know what protocols might be candidates for this. But I think that might be part of the equation as well to consider.
Yeah, I think that the size that we're at now has been a good target, because the people I'm talking with it's not Frax. So they don't have $7 million every 2 weeks to allocate towards this and swallow up a larger chunk of CVX votes. And so I think where we're sitting now kind of lies within the bi-weekly budgets that some of these folks I've been talking with have. And so, I think us adding to it isn't, I mean, yes, it might make them want to work with us even more, but it's not getting us a larger return for it, at least in the conversations that I'm having right now. So, I think that maybe that might change, maybe it won't. It's very, very uncertain to me if adding to our stack is actually going to actually change this conversation.
Gotcha. So my interpretation is there's 3 potential routes. Agnostic if we increase CVX position or if we kept the current CVX position. The 3 routes, just to like define them would be, one is continue doing what we're doing today, taking bribes through Vodium. And the second one would be to try to take bribes directly from a partner in turn for their participation or order flow or X thing that adds value to the, KeeperDAO ecosystem. And then the third would be the original plan, which was the gauge weight, which would probably need larger overhead and an initial flat bribe for actually getting the weight. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to define them without giving a clear one, but my impression still is that overall following through, at least with some of the initial stuff, would probably improve any of those three vectors, no matter which way you look at it. But either way, I just want to throw my my two sats out there. And the other thing I would say is super jazzed on the coordination game coming to fruition now. Excited to kind of observe. So good luck, y'all. Yep.
Appreciate it, Flap. Thank you. Something I saw brought up in voice chats, thought it's actually kind of a funny thought, but getting rid of specific emissions instead and using that, I think that's interesting of looking at our emissions. As we look at the status hub, one of the key things that's coming up is going to the coordonomics, as has been nicely coined, but by some of our folks. And maybe it's a point where turning off those emissions sooner than later would be interesting to consider. I don't know. I'm kind of talking off the top here, so not really enough thought into it. Just saw some comments in voice chat and thought I'd bring it up. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm kind of sitting up here on the pedestal here. Is there anything that we haven't covered today in terms of open proposals? I'm not really seeing much of anything. Has anyone got any thoughts that they still want to share? We started this town hall talking about governance and defining, how we should probably look at, creating some, as Peso said, some parameters around, where votes or sorry, where proposals go on to the self-on stage or go on to the voting stage, and if there was some time frames around that, maybe that might help our process or anything. So I'd love to kind of close this off with just kind of a full circle, and bring the whole kind of governance process back to light, and just see if anyone else had any kind of parting comments on our process. As I know that L1000 has started drafting up a solid document, and I'm going to share some of the notes from this call today with him, and hopefully we get to focus on that in the governance workshop tomorrow, as it looks like I'm getting like 24 inches of snow tonight, so I'll be snuggled up and cozy and ready to chat about that tomorrow. But yeah, I'd love to, while we've got any folks, if there's more feedback that they want to provide on overall governance, I'm here to hear it. If not, then I'm gonna work on building a fire and starting warming up a little bit this house. Yeah, is there anything else before we close out that on proposals, on drafts, on governance that anybody wants to talk about before we close down the town hall for today? Wait, I see a hand. Above average. Joe, hop on up. By the way, I love your little guy. You'll have to tell me what that is. Are you able to get up on stage, Joe? You might want to cancel and retry again. Yeah. Getting rugged by Discord here. You know what? Is it me? Am I the problem? Hey, can I have Matt or Breeze? I thought I saw one of you guys. Can you hop on and try and invite him up on stage? I'm having a little bit of a Discord UI issue here. Can you invite Joe up to the stage, Matt?
Yeah, one sec. Just did. Did you? I don't know if Joe got it or not, but I just sent you the invite.
Man, Discord just is not having a good last week. With them shutting down earlier this week. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, Joe, I would love to get you up on stage. Do you have a role? You might want to try closing and rebooting here. But I guess while we're trying to get you up, this actually does bring up a good kind of final point, which was the update Matt posted that I think is live with Bankless DAO right now. Matt, you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure, and hopefully that'll give enough time for Joe to come up and kind of introduce himself. But just a little context: Above Average Joe is the community manager over Bankless DAO. As you guys may have seen in the updates, we kind of posted a proposal today to really kind of incentivize their network to really kind of be our recruiters in a way, and really highlight the fact that we're kind of vacuuming up talent in the space. I love their community. It's extremely diverse. It's extremely passionate. It's mission driven, and every kind of things that we want. And definitely a lot of talented people over there. And so we're just trying to leverage that community to kind of magnify, the fact that we're open for business. So hopefully you can come up and kind of speak a little bit more. But definitely want to see our relationship with Bankless and really just every community deepen, because really the spirit of what we're trying to do is coordination, right? And we want to try to do coordination at the biggest scale possible. And so DAO to DAO, relationships and proposals like this are exactly the type of things we want to continue to build. But it looks like Joe's up, so I'll stop talking.
Hey guys, welcome from Bankless DAO.
Happy to have you here.
Yeah, I just put up the proposal on our forums at about the beginning of this call, so there hasn't been too long for our community to respond to it, but thus far it's been 100% support. So it's looking like we're going to be moving ahead with this in the next couple of days, and I'm definitely hyped for what that means for both of our DAOs. But yeah, I think that what we're looking at here is a pathway for us to source all the talent you guys are looking for in real short order. I've been engineering a lot of the early stages of the Bankless DAO side to funnel the talent that we have at our disposal your direction. I'm also considering personally taking up an application to the community manager role over here, so I'll be interested to see what you guys do with that.
Well, hey, first step is you showing up and participating. So I really like to see it.
Absolutely.
I think we're in 100% consensus that we're all tired of deets, so we need some new blood.
Tell me something I don't know there, Matt. Jeez. Oh man. Well, the funny thing is that this does prove that it's not just me with 17 alts like the rumors have been going around. So maybe it's only 5 alts, but we'll see what happens.
Right on.
Yeah.
And by the way, this PFP is a chippy, which is an NFT that is created by a guy named Perchy in Bankless DAO. I see that there's another one in the crowd here that Tay's rocking. And yeah, you can pick them up usually pretty cheap on OpenSea, but I got a feeling that project's going places.
Awesome. Well, if you look at my PFP here, it's a Punk's knockoff that I made myself, and I actually sold it to myself as well. So, I'm now an artist as well, in my eyes.
Gotta start
cool.
somewhere.
Well, Joe, I really appreciate that. And, for us, I'm really excited to see that, as Matt's joined on, and I know Tommy and Hazard have been really looking at recruiting and hiring and how we're doing things. I was quoted between 25 and 40% commission on first year compensation for working with recruiting firms. And working with you guys, not only is that a significant lower the number. I think that the proposal had 10%, but you have people working in Web3, working in DeFi right now already. I think it's really cool to see. And so I think that, an opportunity like this is really cool, and really appreciate you guys wanting to support us. And so I'm pretty excited about it.
Absolutely. And we're constantly getting a stream of new talent thanks to the Bankless LLC sending the energy they are capturing our direction. So the brain drain from TradFi is flowing directly into Bankless DAO. And we are definitely happy to take that talent and then put it into the best places in Web3, like KeeperDAO. So I think it is not just symbiotic, but full-on ecosystem development. And what I see here is the seeds of the business models of tomorrow.
For sure. Sorry, I just got a DM saying that the feds are watching me for wash trading this. So, oh man.
One more thing I just want to throw out was, I
go
think
ahead.
this is a great example of just your cross-DAO collaborations, and I encourage any community member who, if they've identified another community DAO protocol that just really has, a lot of mission-driven talent, let us know. We want to kind of build relationships with them, and we're kind of using you guys as our scouts to, kind of be your eyes and ears. So, message me, message Deets, really message anybody who you feel kind of strong about, and we want to hear about, those other great communities to kind of collaborate with.
Yeah, I mean, and just to piggyback on that, there's been community members singing our tune other places, and it really needs to be recognized and thanked. I know, Peso and L1000 have been talking to other protocols and getting them in contact with us, and for anyone else that's been doing that, it's really appreciated. We've had amazing conversations that have come out from there, and so not just a big thank you, but they are beneficial. They are leading to action and conversations and hopefully integrations and order flow coming through us. And so I want to continue to activate this community, and I'm excited to see kind of where we're heading with that as well.
Absolutely. And with the experience that I've got in Bankless DAO and spinning that up since day one, the corollary I see is what we call our Dowplomats. And it sounds like you guys have a really strong initial program in that direction. And in my opinion, that is going to be one of the main powerhouses for DAOs, because alone we can go a little ways, but when we work together, that's when we get the power to do things like change regulatory infrastructure. And doing things like that is going to make this space successful.
Awesome.
Sorry, being out of breath. I'm running around with my.
No, we know that you're just that excited about this. It's giving you asthma. I appreciate it. Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming up here, talking with us, taking a little bit of a ribbon from me. I really appreciate it. We're excited to see where this heads. If you're putting your name in the hat, get that application in, and that goes for everybody else as well. Take a look at our jobs board. If you are interested in something, fill out that contributor application and start the process. We have gotten a good chunk of applications in already. We're internally reviewing them. So if you're waiting on a response or anything, we are going to be getting back to you. It's our favorite word around here. It's a process, and we're both building and reviewing. So please, I hate to say have a little bit of patience, but we will be following up. And for folks that have interest, that haven't hopped onto the jobs board or filled out an application, please do. We're growing.
Sweet. And my DMs are open, so if you guys have any questions about what that partnership at Bankless DAO is going to look like, or ideas in how to make it better, hit me up and I'll make it happen.
Awesome, Joe. Well, we appreciate it. Cool. Well, I think with that, we can go on ahead and close this out today. Appreciate everybody that hopped up and gave their feedback on the call. And if you're looking to, think about our governance process and SOFA on roles and things like that, I think that's going to be the focus of tomorrow's governance workshop. So I'll be there at what is it? 3 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I'll have an event made up in Discord here, and hope to see a number of you there helping and working and thinking about these issues. And appreciate you all joining me today. And if you don't hop into the workshop, have a great weekend. If you're here in the Northeast like me, stay warm, stay safe. I would say don't go driving, but I guess some people probably have better cars than me. So, but with all that said, thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch you again next time. Thanks, everybody.